Today, my lecture will be on William Blake's Songs of Innocence and Songs of Expeirence. The title is The Ultimate Synthesis, a study in Songs of Innocence and Songs of Expeirence. William Blake formed his creative habits in the age immediately preceding Romanticism. Still, his characteristics are romantic in the expanded sense of giving a primary place to imagination and individual feeling. Like the Romantics, Blake thought of the Augustan period as an interruption of the normal native tradition. This sense of belonging to the native traditions helps to distinguish Romanticism in England from Romanticism on the continent, especially France. It also enables the English Romantic writers in their fertile period, at any rate, to lean less heavily on religious and political conservatism in their search for a tradition. In fact, the great achievement of English Romanticism was its grasp of creative autonomy, its declaration of artistic independence. Blake stands outside the regular line of succession of English poets. His poetry is unique as he is completely free from conventional restraints of all kinds. According to many critics, he is the most inspired of English poets. He himself said that he wrote poetry under the influence of supernatural powers. He obeyed no voice but that which he heard in his mystic soul. He always dreamt dreams and saw visions, and these he embodied in his poetry. He relies solely on imagination and makes no appeal to reason. According to him, imagination is the divine faculty in man. Reason, on the other hand, is a wild beast, the malignant spirit from which we must escape as it inhibits and kills the imagination. That is why no rational approach can help us understand Blake's poetry clearly. It is only through his imaginative faculty that the reader can construe imaginative flights of Blake. The nature of my work, he said, is visionary or imaginative. It is an endeavor to restore what the ancient called the Golden Age. By vision of the Golden Age, he meant the view of the world, not as it might be, still less as it ordinarily appears, but as it really is when it is seen by human consciousness at the greatest height and intensity. It is not an aspiration for the distant future, but a realization of the living present. It is the artist's business to attain this heightened, transfigured view of things and show us actually what kind of world is in front of us, with all its glowing splendors and horrifying evils. It is only the direct, intuitive, and imaginative perceptions which work without compromise with unimaginative notion of reality that can clearly render the form of such a world. And Blake gave his vision of such a world utterance in language which, except to those in sympathy with his vision, reads like an elaborate cipher devised from common words. It is no wonder that a large number of Blake's poems, because of their rich and complex symbolism, should have caused much headache to readers of ordinary perception. The reasons are obvious. His mind was undisciplined as he failed to correlate all he saw or to organize his mystic intuitions. He lacked the balance, clarity, and tolerance which a classical learning might have provided. Upon an age not used to thinking in symbols, he tried to impose those of his own devising, or drawn from esoteric sources such as Jewish Kabbalistic ideas from the Swedish visionary and religious thinkers, Emanuel Swedenborg from the German mystic Jacob Boehm. His imagination was in rebellion not only against the limits of reality but also against the only means by which he could make his vision visible to others. As Albert Baugh puts it, Blake is talking to men on the earth in some language which he learned in heavenly places. He relied too confidently upon powers which were not as extraordinary as his own and which lacked the private key to his great secrets. His gospel is the gospel of brotherhood, based on mercy, pity, peace, and love. It is through the cultivation of these that man becomes God, and it is only in the state of innocence. But human life is governed by these principles. These ideas are brought out in his songs of innocence. But innocence is not enough. Hard suffering and bitter experience are necessary for making a complete man, and experience is always bought at a bitter price. These ideas are embodied in Songs of Expeirence. Here his mood is that of an angry, passionate rebel. He shows how, in our so-called civilization, worldly experience breaks the free will and imagination and brings instead dark, cold fear. In the Songs of Innocence and Expeirence, there are only hints of the final consummation which shall restore men to the fullness of joy from innocence through which true vision comes. Blake's works contains, however, much simpler things. He wrote lyrics of extraordinary freshness, delicacy, and spontaneity. He could speak in a child's voice of innocent joys and sorrows and the simple elemental things. He could write these things as well as the Elizabethans. Blake gave up the couplets and used short rhyming lines in his stanzas. He often commits every conceivable fault against grammar and text. He takes no care about the meter and sings tunes that depend for their beauty neither on the disposal of accents or the counting of syllables. The supreme importance of Blake's is its assertion of the right of the individual imagination to recreate all earth and heaven after the pattern of the own revelation. Blake's earliest poetry shows the influence of the lyrics of Shakespeare, of Spenser, of Milton, of Thomas Chatterton, and other 18th century imitators of older styles. Poetical Sketches contains lyrics of extraordinary freshness and delicacy and spontaneity. His odes to spring and autumn are the harbingers of Keats. As Mayer puts it, in all the English lyrics there is no voice so clear, so separate or so distinctive as his. Like many other artists, Blake employed a central group of related symbols to form a dominant symbolic pattern. These are the child, the father, and Christ, representing innocence, experience, and a higher innocence. Though these two song series describes two separate contrary states of the human soul, yet Blake created a system of which innocence and experience are vital, integral parts. Each of Blake's two song series consists of a number of smaller units or states or symbols which may be called minor contributory symbols of the major symbols, so that the relation of each unit to the series as a whole might be stated as a kind of progression. Hence, for the serious readers of Blake's songs, a constant awareness of the context or states in which a poem appears is indispensable, and since each state is made up of many poems, the other poems in that state must be consulted to grasp the full significance of any poem. Let us clarify how the two series of songs form an interrelated systems and the same method of approach is applicable to all the songs. Songs of Expeirence are introduced and sung by the piper, while Songs of Expeirence by the bard. Both exhibit imaginative vision and present, past and future. For the piper, the past can only be the primal unity, the present is innocence, and the immediate future is experience. For the bard, the past is innocence, the present experience, the future is higher innocence. It is natural then that the piper is conscious of the child's essential divinity and assured of his present protection. But into the joyous context, the elements of experience constantly intrude themselves so that the note of sorrow is never completely absent from the piper's pipe. On the other hand, the bard's voice is solemn and more deeply resonant. For the high-pitched joy of innocence is now only a memory. Within this gloom, though, lies the ember which can leap into a flame of any movements to light the way to the higher innocence. In the little vagabond of Songs of Expeirence, there are 4 points of view: that of the mother, who is now out of her element and can no longer protect her child as she did in Songs of Innocence; that of the person, who is a part of the major symbol of experience, father, priest, king; that of the vagabond himself, a child of experience, not the gay, carefree, irresponsible child of innocence; and that of the bard, through whose vision each of the other points of view can be studied and evaluated. Another good example is Holy Thursday of Songs of Innocence. From a conventional point of view, it is thoughtful and kind of the wise guardians of the poor to run charity school and to take the children occasionally to St. Paul's Cathedral to give thanks for all their so-called blessings. But from the piper's point of view, the children clearly are disciplined, regimented, marched to formation to church in the uniforms of their respective schools, mainly to advertise the charitable souls of their supposed guardians. The point here is that in the state of innocence, there is or ought to be no discipline, no regimentation, no marching, no uniform, and no guardians. Merely free, uninhibited, thoughtless play on the echoing green. Accordingly, the children in Holy Thursday assert and preserve their essential innocence not by going to church, but by freely and spontaneously, like a mighty wind, raising to heaven the voice of song. The simple act raises them to level far above their supposed benefactors who are without vision, without innocence, without love. Beneath them sit the aged man, wise guardians of the poor. The irony is severe, but lost upon us, unless we are aware of the context and point of view. Oh, what a multitude they seemed! These flowers of London town, seated in companies, they sit with radiance all their own. The hum of multitudes was there, but multitudes of lamps, thousands of little boys and girls raising their innocent hands. It has already been explained that the two-song series reveals two contrary states of the human soul, and that, unlike many other artists, Blake employs a central group of related symbols to form a dominant symbolic pattern. His are the child, the father, also includes priest and king and Christ, representing the states of innocence, experience, and higher innocence. The lyrics of the former group have for their imager symbol the child. It is a state of unspoiled innocence where imagination has its full and free play. Life is governed by mercy, pity, peace, and love. Human beings act from spontaneous impulses. Human beings act from a spontaneous impulse, not from rules imposed from without. They have the same kind of security and assurance which belong to lambs under a wise shepherd or the children under loving parents. The poems, as for example, Piping Down the Valley, Nurse's Song, Holy Thursday, have generally a childlike freshness, delicacy, and spontaneity. They reveal a sense of everything in its proper place, of peace, joy, and order, ruling together, that is, Nurse's Song. Even into the joyous context of the songs of innocence, the elements of experience constantly intrude themselves, and the note of sorrow is never completely absent from them. Experience is not only a fact, but is a necessary stage in the cycle of being. It may in many ways be a much lower state than innocence, but it is nonetheless necessary. According to Blake, experience is bought at a bitter price, not merely in such unimportant matters as comfort and peace of mind, but in the highest spiritual values. His songs of innocence are poetry of this process. When he sings, the fear and denial of life which come with experience breeds hypocrisy, which in the eyes of Blake is the worst evil, an antithesis to the divine image. In the human abstract, with bitter irony, he shows how love, pity, and mercy can be distorted and used as a cover for base or cowardly motives. Speaking through the hypocrite's lips, he goes straight to the heart of the matter by showing how hypocrisy claims to observe these cardinal virtues: love, pity, and mercy. In the corrupt frame of mind, selfishness and cruelty flourish and are dignified under false names. Perhaps the worst thing in experience, according to Blake, is that it freezes the current of natural love and affection. Blake's painful realization of the restrictions which experience brings and which imprison and kill the living spirit was no purely personal thing. It was his criticism of society, of the whole trend of contemporary civilization. His compassionate heart bled for the suffering which society inflicts on the humble members and for the tragic waste of time, precious human material. In London, he gives his own view of the Chartered Liberty, on which his countrymen prided themselves, and exposes the ugly hard facts. The child chimney sweeper, the soldier, and the harlot are Blake's types of oppressed victims of a society based not on brotherhood but on fear. Each in his own way shows up the shams on which society thrives. The contrast between truth and pretense, between natural happiness and unnatural repression is stressed by Blake in these three examples. How the chimney sweepers cry! How the chimney sweepers cry! Every blackening church apples, and the hapless soldier sigh runs in blood down palace walls. But Blake was not content simply to complain or to criticize. He sought an ultimate synthesis in which innocence might be wedded to experience and goodness to knowledge. Even within the gloom of experience lies the embers which can leap into flame at any moment to light the way to higher experience. That such a state is possible, he reveals in the first poem of the Songs of Expeirence, where he speaks with the voice of the prophetic bard and summons the fallen soul of the earth to some vast apocalypse. According to Abrahams, the two series were written not merely for our enjoyment or even for our edification, but for our salvation. I again repeat this quote. This is a very important quote. According to Abrahams, the two series were written not merely for our enjoyment or even for our edification, but for our salvation. Thank you.